So messaging is a big topic, and some people, honestly don't even really know what messaging is. What's the difference between messaging and copy and messaging and content and all of that stuff? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 5 weeks going through explaining what messaging is, where it fits in, how to make it all connected and more, because there's a lot of pieces, right? You have ads, you have launches, you have content, you have emails, you have all these things that are going out. And a lot of people look at that and they go, well, what's the framework for this email? Or what's the framework for this sales process or this or that? But they never ask, how do I communicate within the email that matches to the ad, that matches to the webinar, and pull people through and just create cohesive communication through my entire brand? And so today what we're going to do is we're going to dive deep into the content side of, well, what messaging elements do we need when creating content? How can we create really powerful content? What content do we need and more? But what I want you to do is to pay attention to the elements that we are going to be talking about. Pay attention to the elements that we are using, because what you'll notice is the same elements that we're going to be talking about today will be the same elements we use through the next 5 weeks as we dive into every piece of messaging that you're going to need within your brand. So if you're ready to figure out and see and hear how you can start creating really effective content to build rapport, to build trust, the two types of trust you need. Yes, there are two types of trust you need. How to build educational content, establish authority. We're diving into all of that today. So if you want to learn how to do all that inside your content, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. We have something pretty special for you guys. Today's going to be episode number 1 of a 5-part series we're doing all around messaging. Okay, so we're going to do, it's all around messaging, and each week is going to be a different episode on messaging or a different topic around messaging. So we're going to talk about content, messaging within sales, messaging within launches and funnels, messaging within ads. And we're going to go through each, like the elements involved in each one of those. And then the 5th episode will be, how do we use all of these elements together to create one big messaging ecosystem within your brand? And what you'll find is we kind of use the same elements all the way through the entire series, because that's what messaging is. Messaging is your communication. But the great thing is once you understand your communication, the effective communication, you just get to use it everywhere within your brand. So again, ads, launches, sales, content, and more. So let's go ahead and dive in. Today, what we're going to do is talk about content. And I do have to apologize. I'm a little under the weather, as you can hopefully, maybe you didn't notice, but maybe you did. It's one of those things where I breathe in too heavily. I feel like I have to cough. So if I cough or stutter or stumble, that's the reason why. But we're going to power through. We're going to do this. We're going to go deep into messaging behind content. So let's start with content and the elements that we're going to need for content. So when it comes to messaging, you have to understand most of us, the very first thing that we have to do with messaging, or the very first experience that people are going to have with messaging, usually comes in 2 ways, 2 areas. It comes in the form of content or ads. So ads will be, the first thing that people see. If they're brand new, cold to you, that sort of stuff. Content also, like they stumble upon you, or they search and find you, or someone sends them a video. So that could also be a first touch point. However, what we wanted, the main difference with content versus ads is like almost guaranteed. Once you run through your warm traffic, it's pretty much guaranteed that everyone who is seeing your ad is brand spanking new to you. They're not going to have time to go through your content. They're not going to have, or not time, but they're not going to have that experience of going through your content and listening to what you have to say, or listening to a podcast episode. So it's quick, it's short, it's more direct response. Content doesn't necessarily have to be direct response. It shouldn't be direct response. It really, like in order for content to be really effective and have great messaging within your brand, people need to experience multiple pieces of your content. You can't deliver every single piece of your message or messaging in your content. It's just impossible. You can't do it. Okay. So we need to go step by step and go through it. There's not going to be a single piece of content that's going to have every element we need. Messaging element. That's why we have 4 quadrants of content to deliver different types of messages at different times. The only way I've seen it really work where like one piece of content could embrace all of those is when it comes to podcasting. Podcasting allows us to have more time to be able to do those things. But it also doesn't have to. You don't need to shove all of this into a single episode on the podcast. So with that being said, let's start off with the 4 quadrants of content. Now, these 4 quadrants, they kind of shift and changed over the last year or so, a little bit. If you're in NGM, you have everything that you need. But if you're not in there yet, what you may have heard on the podcast may be a little bit different than what you hear today, depending on how long you've been listening. So I'm just going to dive into these 4 quadrants. Now, I want to be very clear about something. These 4 quadrants are not equally spaced out. Okay. So they're not equally spaced out, meaning that it's not a 25, 25, 25, 25. Like you do 25% of this, 25% of that, 20. No, every brand is a little bit different. So some brands might do better with thought reversals, which if you don't know what that is, we will definitely be going into that today. Some may do better with self-identifying. Some might be better with educational. So you're going to have to just sort of see which not formula, but percentage works better for your business. Like, oh, my audience does really well with this, or resonates really well with this, or not so much with these types. And I'm going to limit these a little bit. So you get to kind of go through it all. So I'm going to go through the 4 quadrants of content. The first one is connection. Connection content is really important because this is what allows you to build the trust with your audience. This is like the know, the like, the trust. This is where we build that rapport. This is where we get to speak our message, speak our heart. This is where we really get to open up and just really just stand up for, what we want to believe in. These can also be sort of classified as motivational, inspirational. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes people will look at these and go, oh, you're just doing a motivational video. And as we dive deeper into them, you'll see why they're not just motivational. And if you just classify them as motivational, inspirational, you'll be missing a lot. And you'll see why in a second. So that's connection. Again, it builds the trust. That's the objective of why we do it. It allows you to speak your heart. It allows you to state what you believe within your brand, what your brand stands for. It allows you to just build that connection and get people to go like, wow, I really like that person. Number 2 is educational. And I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about how to. There's a lot of different ways to do educational content. It doesn't have to be in the form of tutorial or how to, although it can be, but there are a lot of different ways to educate people. I always use the example of a TED Talk versus an encyclopedia. TED Talk is engaging, great lessons, creates demand, but it's not just like, here's step 1, here's step 2. So again, we want both. Inside of our program, we have like 5 or 6 different ways to do educational content, including something called the persuasive tutorial. But educational is great because it allows you to build that authority, allows you to just demonstrate and show people, look, I know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. I'm an authority. It's that sort of thing. And obviously to help people, right? It's to help your audience. It's to help them solve a problem. It's to help them overcome something, to find a solution. It's all of that. So it's educational, has many different pieces to it. There's multiple ways to go about it. Okay. But again, just to recap, it gives you that authority. So now we've covered connection. We've covered educational. So now we've built that rapport. We've built the connection. We've built the know, like, and trust, and we've established some sort of authority. Okay. Number 2 is what I call self-identifying language. The master of this, in my opinion, is the holistic psychologist. She's very good at this content. In fact, her content is what allowed me to discover, wow, this self-identifying thing is really powerful, because I saw how powerful her content was. And as I dove deeper into asking myself, why is it so powerful? I started to become more clear on why it was powerful. The reason why it was so powerful is because it got the audience to come to their own conclusion that, one, they have the problem that she can solve, and or not only did it do that, but sometimes it would also create extreme amount of relevancy, because people would be like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. That's what I'm going through. She's describing me. Okay. What it also did is it made people aware of things they weren't aware of before. So you have to understand your audience has a problem. They don't know that why it's happening. They don't know why what they're trying to do to fix it isn't working. And when you can sort of connect those dots for people, like, this is what's causing the problem, or this is why this thing you're doing to try to fix a problem isn't working. People go, oh, okay, it's dot connecting. It's awareness raising. So we'll talk about self-identifying as well. And then the last quadrant is thought reversal. Thought reversal is perspective shifting content. When we look at best-selling books, these are always the best-selling books. They always know, like in the nonfiction realm, it's always like, look, I know this is the industry standard. This is the belief most people have. This is probably what you've been doing, but it doesn't work. And you start to show the flaws and you start to discredit those industry norms or those beliefs. And people go like, oh my God, I never saw that before. I never realized that before. So the reason why thought reversals are so important, because it gives you thought leadership access or status. And the reason why it does that is because you're challenging the status quo. You're challenging the norm. You're taking a stand for something that's outdated and doesn't work anymore. You have to understand that everything inside of your space was all created by someone at some point. It will become outdated as we grow, as we learn, as we discover more things. That's what thought reversals start to do. Thought reversals start to challenge outdated stuff and position you as a thought leader. You have to do them right. You have to do them correct. You can't just do them for the sake of trying to be right. You actually have to identify and find those limited and outdated beliefs and those industry norms that don't work anymore. You have to find those things. Okay. But when we have thought reversals, it gives you thought leadership access. And then when we have this self-identifying content that I talked about, what we start to do is we start to get the other type of trust that you need. And the other type of trust that you're going to need within your brand is people have to trust in your ability to solve their problem. If they do not trust your ability to solve their problem, they will not buy from you. They just won't. It's just the way it works. They will not buy from you. No matter how much they like you, no matter how much they think you're cool or funny or whatever it may be, they will not buy from you if they do not trust in your ability to solve their problem. I have a lot of friends who are very successful and they don't have kids. And if they ever released a course on how to raise successful kids, I probably wouldn't buy their course, even though I adore them and love them, because I don't trust their ability to teach that, to accomplish that, because they've never done it, right? They just don't have the experience. So self-identifying content allows us to do that. So what I want to do is, now that we have the 4 quadrants of content, I was thinking of like, how do we go and teach these? And so I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm not going to go into each one and talk about how to do it. I'm actually going to talk about the elements you're going to need to make all of these work, and then tell you what content those elements are relevant to. Okay. So we'll give that a shot. So in order to start let's go here real quick. The thing that I want to say about these 4 quadrants is you guys are not limited to just these 4 quadrants. You should be testing other things, like try vlogging, try like short dancing reels if that's what your heart desires. Like, just try whatever it is that you want to try. In no way, by no means am I telling you you have to use these 4 and just these 4. You want to use these 4 in combination with whatever else it is that you want to use. And so you're not stuck with just these 4. In fact, I think you should always be experimenting with everything. Now, the ratio that I recommend you use is going to be start with, where is it? Okay. So I would say start with about 50% educational, 20% connection, 20% self-identifying, and 10% thought reversal, and around that ratio, and just see what starts to happen. Okay. So just see what starts to happen, and then you can adjust those ratios based on how your audience receives it and how they respond to it. All right, so let's dive into the elements. So here's the elements, because the next question I get is like, well, Brandon, how do we start to piece these together? What elements do I need? What are the topics going to be? All of that stuff. Okay. So number one is we want to start with problems and symptoms. So the reason why we're going to start with problems and symptoms is you have to understand what it is that your audience is dealing with. You have to ask yourself, what do I solve for people? What does my skills, what does my knowledge, what does all of this actually solve for people? And what a lot of people do is they just take all their skills and knowledge and they shove it into a program, and then they try to sell the program and they don't understand why it's not working. And they don't realize, okay, I'm talking too much from solution. I'm trying to over-educate people, all of that stuff, right? But when we start to accurately and specifically describe people's problems, what starts to happen is their subconscious automatically starts to pay attention to what's going on. Okay. So when I say, hey, if you're a course creator dealing with X, Y, and Z, and it's so specific that someone reads and goes, oh my God, that's me. That's the self-identifying language that we want. So the first messaging element to start piecing your content together is you want those things. You need to know those things. And what I always do, what we use this for, is going to be in our self-identifying content. So when you create a piece of content that says like 5 reasons why this problem occurs, and then you go through the 5 causes, right? Those are problems, those are symptoms, those are mistakes that cause it, those are the causes. Like that sort of specific language is great with self-identifying content. Self-identifying content just gets the audience to go, oh my God, that's me. I never realized that's why that's happening. Gets them to self-identify. But we also want to use it in educational content, because what I like to do is when we start educational content and I say something like, hey guys, today we're going to teach you how to create engaging content. Look, I know it's frustrating when you're putting out your best content, your best information, and no one seems to really pay attention to it. No one's clicking on it. No one's consuming it. It's really, really frustrating. And if you're here, you've probably been doing it for 3 months or more. Now the audience goes, oh my God, how do you know that? That's exactly what I'm dealing with. So even in my educational content, because I know the problem, I'm able to pull people in. Okay. So the other reason why we want to start with the problems when it comes to self-identifying and educational is because they can also inspire topics. So if I know the problem that someone is having is that they're putting out their best information and they're not getting the sales, then I can create a piece of content around that is like 5 ways to get more engagement on your best information in the form of content or something like that. Like that's not the world's best title, but hopefully you guys are seeing like it's not about a benefit-based title, although those are still helpful. It is a problem-based thing, right? So another example would be if I'm a parenting coach and I know that I have an audit, like I yell at my kids in order to get them to listen. My title could be how to get your kids to listen the first time, or how to stop yelling at your kids, or how to get your kids to listen without yelling. Right? So those are all titles that are stemming and based from a problem, not necessarily a solution or end goal. Now, sometimes when we go too deep into the end goal and things like that, our titles might look like how parents can heal their trauma to stop yelling at their kids. And it's like, well, yeah, that might be the solution, is like, because they're triggered and then they're yelling and there's some sort of trauma there or something, right? But they don't know that. They just know that they're at a problem. So when we kind of take the problems into our mind when we're creating the titles and we're creating the topics, it just becomes another level of relevance. There's another level of relevancy to our audience. So we want to know the problems. We want to know the symptoms of what our audience is going through. These, to be honest with you, you could also probably use these for thought reversal titles. So thought reversals will be that perspective shifting content. So a thought reversal would be essentially like this. Like I could identify an industry norm. I can that is outdated, which I believe that how-to content in order to build an audience is an outdated belief. I don't think it works for everyone. I think it works for like maybe 5% of the people out there. So I look at that and I go, okay, well, I'm going to create a title, curiosity driven title. It says, is how-to content really the best way to build a brand online? ? And then I start with, is how-to content really the best way to build a brand online? Then I live in compassion. Look, I understand why you think that. Everyone and their mom is telling you to do this and that and da 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 da. But when we look at Gary Vaynerchuk, Simon Sinek, Brene Brown, they have huge brands, tons of engagement, and they aren't doing how-to content. They're doing something else. Now, in that moment, people go like, oh my God, I never realized that before. And then I can go into the new solution, right? But I sometimes looking at the problem really helps with this, because I go, what's the problem that someone is going through? What is the problem they're going through? And I ask myself, why do they have that problem? Is there a belief that they're doing? Is there a mistake or a belief that they have? Is there a mistake that they're doing? Because beliefs cause actions. So is there a belief they have that's causing the action that they have that's causing the problem? I'll ask myself, is there an industry norm here that they're following or believing that is causing the problem? And those will always be the most powerful thought reversal topics. So element number one that we need is going to be problems and symptoms. Okay. The next element we're going to need is benefits and desires. Now, I don't talk about this enough because I really harp on problems, because it's just one of these things that people just don't get. People just don't seem to follow and understand. And I have to say it 1.5 million times. So I lean really heavy into pushing, people into understanding the problems. But at the same time, we do need to understand the benefits and the desires that people also have. So what are they trying to gain? What are they trying to accomplish? And what I find is when we focus more on what are they trying to gain and accomplish, we want to look at what's within their awareness. So if you're a parenting coach and you know that parents yell at their kids because they're triggered and they have triggers because there's trauma, we don't want to say to them, like, finally heal your trauma. We want to say, finally stop yelling at your kids. So it's like, hey, do you have to yell at your kids a minimum of 2 times every morning in order to get them to listen? And the only thing you want to do is you just want to figure out how you can get them to listen without yelling with almost every single task that you have within the house that you need them to do. So now we're combining the problem with the benefit and the end goal. So we do need to know the specific benefits, the specific desires, and keyword here is specific problems, specific benefits, specific desires. And we want to do it with educational content. Okay. So the reason why I use this with educational content is because it will inspire titles. So you can still use benefit-driven stuff in your titles and just test it, just see how it does. But also you want to use them while you teach. So if I'm going to start a video and it says hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how to create really engaging content. And then I go right into the problem, like, hey, you're probably posting your best stuff for free. It's not really working. It's completely frustrating, da, 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 da. Well, in this video, in the next 5 minutes, we're going to totally break down how you can create really engaging content that stops the scroll, gets your ideal audience to click over, and you'll never have crickets on your videos again, right? So problem and benefit combined together in the intro of my educational content makes it more powerful. And honestly, guys, I do the same thing with every step that I teach too. So every step that I teach, especially on webinars and sales mechanisms, I'm always going into that. Before I even reveal what the step is, I said, okay, here's step number 1. Like, here's the biggest problem you're going to face when this is not working. But after this, and after I teach you this, you're going to be able to experience X, Y, and Z. So again, benefits and desires. Let's move on to messaging element number 3. Messaging element number 3 is beliefs and industry norms. We need to know the beliefs and industry norms that your audience has that are causing problems. So once you identify the problems, you need to ask yourself, what beliefs do they have and what norms are they following that are causing these problems? What belief do they have? What industry norm are they listening to that is causing the problem? And there almost always is one. And as you start to find out what these are, you start to create thought reversals around these. Okay, so you start to create thought reversals around these industry norms and beliefs. So with a thought reversal, the first thing you want to do is just state what the belief is, state what the norm is. Okay. Number 2, or you can question it. So you want to state what it is and say that it's wrong, it's outdated or whatever, or question it. Is this really the best way to get X, Y, and Z? Then you want to live in compassion because you're going to be butting up against the reality. So you're going to go right into like, hey, I understand why you think that, da, 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 da. And then you're going to go into discredit. So you want to discredit the belief. Basically, you're going to expose the flaws in it. So you can use different sort of patterns like chunking up. So you ask like, well, does everyone who does how-to content get the result they want? No. We can chunk down and make it specific to them. So it's like, well, if that was working, then how come it's not working for you? Why isn't it working now? We can use counterexamples like I use Gary Vaynerchuk, Brene Brown, all of that stuff to kind of show like, oh my gosh, yeah, they aren't doing that, right? And then you want to go into, so what are they doing or what is the solution? Then you go into your solution. But again, it all stems from beliefs and industry norms. And when you guys watch my launches or my webinars, I'm using all of these. I'm talking about problems and I'm talking about symptoms. I'm talking about benefits. I'm talking about the desires. I'm talking about the beliefs and the industry norms. And I'm talking about the mistakes they're making that they're not aware of. I'm connecting these dots, right? And then so the next thing we want to do, so that's thought reversals. The next thing we want to do is move into connection content with beliefs. So we still want to use beliefs inside of connection content. And we want to do this not with the beliefs that are causing problems, but the beliefs that you want to take a stand for. So like I have a belief that I think entrepreneurs are the ones that change the world the most. I believe, kindness and compassion is something that everyone should have. Like getting out of anger is something that everyone should focus on. Like these are all things that I think would be really beneficial. I think focusing on your limiting beliefs and overcoming them are all like really powerful things that you can do as an entrepreneur, right? So I can talk about those things. I can talk about that in stories. I can talk about that in content. I also believe that, we should be teaching kids to be critical thinkers. And I believe that we should be teaching kids to question things. And I believe that society is not set up for our kids to be successful. I believe all of that stuff. And I talk about that within my brand, probably not as much as I should, but I love talking about it within the brand because it builds connection with my audience. So my audience tends to believe similar things. And it's like, okay, I really like Brandon and I like what he says and I like what he stands for. I also tell a lot of stories that kind of reveal my values. So my kids, my family, all that stuff is a high value to me. I talk about my spiritual path because that is a high value to me. I talk about all these things to just, again, relay my beliefs, relay my stuff. And by the way, you don't have to relay everything in your brand. You can be totally selective with it. So you don't have to like talk about anything and everything within your brand. You have to understand that what you choose to do with your connection content will be who you attract. So if you're like, if you're Catholic or you have some sort of religious belief or you are spiritual and you're like, I don't want to just work with Catholics or spiritual people. I want to work with everyone. Well, then maybe don't talk about it as much, right? But if you are like that and you're like, I do want to just work with people with this belief system, then start to use that in your brand and you start to talk about it more. And then that's going to be who you attract. You're literally the light that attracts the audience that comes into your ecosystem. So use it with your connection content, your beliefs, right? So the next thing that we want to talk about, element number 4, is going to be your identity and values. And this is the identities of who you want to attract. So if you want to attract moms, then use the word moms. If you want to attract course creators, then use the word course creators. If you want to attract yogis, then use the word yogis. And then you can incorporate that into your titles as well. So for me, in our ads and our content, I try to use the word course creators and online coaches a lot. We use it within our copy. One of the things I could do inside of a title is, instead of titling it how to create engaging content, I can title it how course creators create engaging content. So now someone's identity's in there. That's going to be who I attract. That's a subconscious trigger that's going to get them to stop and listen and pay attention. But I also want to include values. And I kind of talked about that already. So we're going to put that into connection content. So connection content really boils down to identities, values, beliefs of the person that you want to attract. But there's also the other beliefs that they have that are causing problems. They're limiting beliefs. So you have empowering beliefs and limiting beliefs. Empowering beliefs and who you want to attract goes in connection content. You have limiting beliefs that go into thought reversal content. This is also something that I like to talk about when it comes to niching. So a lot of the elements that we talked about already in the form of content are literally what we're going to use to niche down. And so what this means is we're going to use problems, identities, and values. So if you want to niche and you're not really sure how to niche down or whatever it may be, you want to start with the problem. So you're going to say, I help, or you're going to start with the identity. I help identity who overcome this problem, but also has these values. So for me, it would be something like, I help course creators who put their best stuff out there for free, post a lot of information that can really help people, but their audience and sales just aren't growing. Their launches are sort of plateaued, and it's so frustrating because they want to change the world, right? That's a value. So the values change the world. The problem is posting stuff and it's not really resonating, even though it can help people. And the identity is the course creator. That's my niche. I don't pick a category of a category of a category. I'm using these elements to figure out what my niche is going to be, who my niche is, right? So I'm using all of these elements to sort of figure that out. And then the last element I'm going to cover, and I'm going to cover it quickly because it's pretty straightforward and simple, is your unique solution. The unique solution is kind of the last element. It's really important, but I don't like putting a lot of weight on it because when I do, a lot of people go directly into teaching mode. So what unique solution is your unique process to solving the problem for someone. That's it. So you all have a process. If you have a course, you have a program, you have a process. You have a process of how you help people, right? So when it comes to your unique solution, you all have a process for it. That process can also inspire educational content topics. So if I know pillar number one for me is subconscious language or scroll stopping language or whatever you want to call it, then I can look at that and go, okay, what can I teach underneath pillar number one in the form of educational content? Okay, I got this topic, I got this topic, I got this topic. What problem is someone facing that requires this topic to be necessary, right? So now I know the problem. I can use it in the copy. I have the topic. I actually know that what I'm about to teach is relevant to my unique solution. It's connected to my offer. And then I get to use all the other elements that we talked about. So when we go through that educational content, I get to teach part of my unique solution. I get to use the problems. I get to use the benefits. I can use connection points or value points if I want, all of that stuff. So unique solution is really helpful for content because it can inspire a lot of content topics. So with that being said, let's just do a quick recap. The 4 quadrants you need are connection content, educational content, self-identifying, and thought reversal. Okay. You can use more than that. You're not limited to just those 4. You can use more than that, but I do recommend you use them all because connection is going to give you that know, like, and trust. Educational is going to give you that authority. Self-identifying is going to build that relevancy, but also the trust in your ability to solve their problem. And thought reversals is going to give you that thought leadership because it's giving you, it's allowing you to shift people's perspective. Okay. Now, in order to create these to the most amount of effectiveness, we would need problems. You need to know the problems and the symptoms. So that's going to help with self-identifying and thought reversals and even educational. We need to know the benefits and the desires that they have. So what benefits are you going to give them and what desires do they have? That's going to help with educational content, especially as you start to teach it. You can sell, even within your educational content, you can start to get them to self-identify. Number 3 is you need to know the beliefs and industry norms, the limiting beliefs that are causing the problems that they have and the industry norms. This is going to help with connection content. But number 3, we also need to know not just the limiting beliefs, but we need to know the empowering beliefs. So when we have the empowering beliefs, that allows us to build empowering. I'm just writing it down. So empowering beliefs, it allows us to build really effective connection content. So when we have these beliefs that empower, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe, this is what my brand is, it allows people to really sort of connect with us. Okay. The 4th element is identity and values. You need to know the identity of who you want to attract and the values that they have. And then that's going to be used for your connection content. And then we have unique solution, which is just what is your process? What are the pillars? What are the columns that you use in order to get someone result? And then use those as inspiration for educational content topics and all of that good stuff. So you get to just look at it and go like, okay, what can I teach? And then you can use some of these other elements within those videos as well. Okay, so that's how we start to use messaging in sort of content. It allows us to gain all these things that we need in order to build an audience. It gives us all these things we need in order to start generating sales. Okay, so with that being said, what we're going to do next week is we're going to dive into another topic. So we're going to dive into We still have ads, we have launches, we have what else? Sales, we have, and then the 5th episode is going to talk about how all these elements work together to produce really great funnels and really great branding and ecosystem. So hopefully by the end of this, you guys will have everything you need. And then we actually have a 3-day training coming up in March that will help you go even further. Because now that you kind of know the guidelines and the direction of where to go, putting this all together is actually, it is the difficult part. The understanding of what I should do is fairly easy, but how do we do it? What are the exercises involved? What are the frameworks? What are the frameworks for connection? What are the frameworks for educational? What types of educational? Like, Brandon, what do I do when I have all of these? And how once I have all the elements, how do I start to piece these together inside the actual content? And then once I know the elements, how do I know they're even working? How do I know they're even resonating with people? All of that is what we're going to start to cover and help you with inside of the launch, our 3-day training in March. And surprise, surprise, we'll be opening up NGM at the end of March as well to help you go through and piece all this together. So I'm really excited. We're going to be diving a lot into the messaging over the next couple of weeks. So that's it for this week. I'll see you guys all next week, and we'll dive into another topic. And if you have not done so already, please leave us a review on iTunes. I love reading those reviews. And that's it. We'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.